What if I told you that you could reverse the root cause of high blood sugar problems by following simple principles that you can start doing today? Sounds too good to be true, right? Well, settle in because today I'm going to teach you 12 easy ways to reverse insulin resistance with science. But before we start, if you want our free step-by-step guide that shows you how to restore insulin sensitivity with food, movement, and daily habits, comment guide below and we'll send it to you. This way you can always refer back to it and get back on track. Now, let me say something that could completely change how you think about blood sugar. If you've been told your blood sugar is high because you eat too many carbs, I want to pause right there because that explanation sounds simple. It sounds clean. It sounds convincing, but it completely falls apart the moment someone cuts carbs, skips meals, works out harder, and still wakes up with stubborn blood sugar numbers that make no sense. And that's exactly where millions of people are stuck. They're trying harder, restricting more, blaming fruit, blaming beans, blaming themselves, when the real problem is something almost nobody explains clearly. Insulin resistance is not caused by carbohydrates. It is driven largely by fat accumulation inside your muscle and liver cells, what researchers call intracellular fat and hepatic fat. Think of insulin like a key, and think of your cells like locks. When those locks are clean, insulin works beautifully. Glucose flows out of the bloodstream and into your cells where it can be used for energy. But when fat builds up inside the cell, it's like stuffing gum into the lock mechanism. The key still shows up, but it doesn't churn smoothly anymore. That's insulin resistance. And once that happens, you become carbohydrate intolerant. Not because carbs broke you, but because your cells can't respond the way they're supposed to. So today, I'm not giving you a fluffy list of healthy habits. I'm giving you 12 evidence-based ways to fix insulin resistance at the root cause. Some of these are food-related, some are about sleep, some are about stress, circadian rhythm, and movement. But when you put them together, something powerful happens. You stop fighting your metabolism and start creating a completely different internal environment. One where fasting glucose becomes more predictable, post-meal spikes calm down, and carbohydrate tolerance starts to come back. And here's my promise to you. If you apply these consistently, you will stop chasing numbers and start restoring normal physiology. Not through restriction, not through fear, and definitely not through metabolic punishment. So let's get right into it. Number one, sleep like it actually matters. Sleep is not just rest. Sleep is when your body is doing metabolic maintenance. It's hormone regulation, nervous system regulation, glucose regulation, appetite regulation, all at once. And if you shortchange sleep, you can make yourself more insulin resistant almost immediately. In one of the landmark studies in this area, healthy adults were restricted to just 4 hours of sleep per night for several nights. What happened next looked eerily similar to metabolic dysfunction, impaired glucose tolerance, and reduced insulin sensitivity. That's a big deal. These were not people with type 2 diabetes. These were healthy individuals. And just a few nights of bad sleep pushed their metabolism in the wrong direction fast. Now, layer in what happens in real life. Poor sleep usually doesn't happen in isolation. It comes with more stress, more caffeine, more cravings, more cortisol, less patience for exercise, and more blood sugar chaos the next day. Mechanistically, what's happening is this. Less deep sleep and more circadian disruption increase sympathetic nervous system activity, that fight or flight tone, while also raising cortisol. And those hormones tell your liver, release glucose. At the same time, muscle tissue becomes less responsive to insulin. So the liver is pushing sugar out and the muscles are less able to pull it in. That is the perfect setup for stubborn fasting glucose. So no, sleep is not optional if you want to fix insulin resistance. It is one of the foundations. And the goal here is not perfection. It's rhythm. Anchor your bedtime. Anchor your wake time. Keep your room cooler. Protect darkness at night. Reduce bright light and stimulation before bed. Because if sleep gets better, everything else starts working better too. Number two, delay caffeine so you don't stack stress hormones. Now, let's talk about one of the most overlooked blood sugar mistakes in the modern world. Drinking coffee right into a cortisol spike. A lot of people with insulin resistance, especially those waking up with elevated glucose, are already dealing with a strong morning stress hormone pattern. The dawn phenomenon is real. Cortisol naturally rises in the early morning to wake you up and tell the liver to release glucose. That's normal physiology. But when you add caffeine right on top of that, you can amplify the signal. And for some people, simple. That means higher morning glucose, more anxiety, more cravings, and a more stressed metabolic state before breakfast even starts. Here's the key. This is not about demonizing your morning coffee. It's about timing. Caffeine can increase cortisol and catecholamines, and those stress hormones tell your liver to produce more glucose and make muscle tissue less efficient at taking up glucose. So, if your morning blood sugar is already high, immediately stacking coffee on top of that can act like gasoline on the fire. A simple experiment: delay caffeine by 60 to 90 minutes after waking. That's it. You don't need to quit coffee. You just need to stop piling one glucose-raising signal on top of another. And for a lot of people, that one timing shift changes morning cravings, energy stability, and even how wired they feel all day. Number 3, walk after meals like it's a prescription. This one is simple, powerful, and wildly underrated. If you want one of the most effective blood sugar tools that works today, this is it. Walk for 15 to 20 minutes after meals, because when your muscles contract, they can pull glucose out of the bloodstream without depending entirely on insulin. That matters because if insulin resistance is the problem, then waiting for insulin alone to solve the problem is like waiting for a rusty lock to magically unjam itself. Walking opens a side door, and the research here is incredibly practical. In older adults with type 2 diabetes, researchers found that doing 3 short post-meal walks improved daily glucose control more effectively than 1 longer continuous walking session done at a different time. That tells us something important. When you move matters, because the goal isn't just burn calories. The goal is to intercept glucose when it's rising. Mechanistically, muscle contractions increase GLUT4 translocation, meaning glucose transporters move to the cell surface and start clearing sugar from the bloodstream right when it's needed most. In plain English, you are churning your muscles into glucose vacuums. And this is why I tell people, don't think of post-meal walking as exercise for fitness. Think of it as glucose traffic control. If blood sugar is rising after dinner, a 10 to 20 minute walk is one of the fastest, safest ways to redirect that glucose into muscle instead of leaving it stuck in circulation. And if you can only change one thing this week, start here. Number 4, break up sitting because stillness has a glucose cost. A lot of people think, I worked out today, so I'm good. But if you did one workout in the morning and then sat for the next 9 hours, your muscles spent most of the day receiving the message you're not needed. And metabolically, that matters because insulin resistance is not just a disease state. It's also a behavioral environment. Long, uninterrupted sitting makes muscles less metabolically active, lowers glucose uptake demand, and makes it easier for blood sugar to stay elevated after meals. Studies show that even in people without diabetes, breaking up prolonged sitting with short bouts of light movement improves post-meal glucose and insulin responses. That means insulin resistance is not a switch, it's a spectrum, and inactivity pushes you in the wrong direction. Mechanistically, frequent small movements increase blood flow, stimulate muscle contractions, raise glucose demand, and reduce the amount of time glucose lingers in the bloodstream. So don't just think, did I exercise today? Think, how much of my day are my muscles actually active? A simple rule: every hour, stand up and move for 2 minutes. That's enough to begin changing the metabolic tone of the day. And once again, this is not about burning tons of calories. It's about signaling. You are telling your metabolism, we are using fuel. We are not just storing it. Number 5, eat dinner low fat, high fiber, and calm your liver overnight. This next one is huge for people with stubborn morning glucose. A lot of people are terrified of carbs at night, but what quietly destroys nighttime blood sugar regulation for many people is not carbohydrate itself. It's fat-driven insulin resistance, especially when that fat is saturated and the meal is low in fiber. This is where physiology matters more than internet opinions. Classic metabolic experiments have shown that raising circulating free fatty acids can induce insulin resistance rapidly, not in years, not just over decades, quickly. This means a high-fat dinner can create a short-term metabolic environment where insulin signaling is already impaired before you even go to sleep. And what happens overnight? Your liver releases glucose. If your liver is insulin resistant, it releases more than you need. That's one of the major reasons fasting glucose becomes so stubborn. So the goal of dinner is not to eat tiny. The goal is to eat in a way that sends your liver a calm stable signal. That means high fiber, low saturated fat, whole foods. A good dinner structure looks like this: vegetables, legumes, whole grains, fruit if you want it, and very low added fat. Because fiber slows absorption, lowers insulin demand, and supports a healthier overnight glucose pattern. So if your fasting blood sugar is always high, don't just blame carbs. Look at the fat and fiber composition of your evening meal. That's often where the real answer is hiding. If you need help understanding what to eat, comment guide below this video and we'll make sure to send you our guide with recipes that help you reverse insulin resistance. Number 6, stop late night eating to restore circadian glucose control. Your metabolism runs on a clock, and eating late pushes blood sugar into a biological window where your body is supposed to be winding down and repairing, not digesting and managing a fresh wave of fuel. This is where circadian biology becomes incredibly important. Early time-restricted eating has been shown to improve insulin sensitivity and cardiometabolic markers even without intentional calorie restriction. That tells us this is not just eat less, it's eat in alignment with your biology. Late night eating increases glucose exposure during the night and forces the liver and pancreas to do work at a time when the body is naturally less prepared to handle it. And over time, that pushes fasting glucose up. A good rule: finish dinner at least 2 to 3 hours before bed most nights. That one shift often improves sleep, fasting glucose, digestion, and morning energy all at once. Number 7, start the day with fruit, not fear. Let's clear up one of the biggest myths in the blood sugar culture. Fruit did not cause your insulin resistance. Fruit is one of the most unfairly blamed foods in nutrition. Large observational studies consistently show that higher whole fruit intake is associated with lower risk of type 2 diabetes, not higher. Why? Because fruit is not just sugar. It's a low-fat package of fiber, water, micronutrients, antioxidants, and polyphenols. And when dietary fat is low, glucose from fruit is handled far more efficiently. This is why breakfast doesn't have to be eggs or fear. It can be fruit, oats, whole grains, even legumes, as long as the fat stays low enough for insulin to do its job. This matters because the first meal of the day often sets the metabolic tone for what follows. Start with fruit, fiber, and low fat, and your body is much more likely to stay insulin responsive instead of defensive. Again, comment guide below if you have no idea where to start. The meals in this guide will be really helpful to start your journey to reverse insulin resistance. Number 8, add cinnamon for a small but real edge. Now let's talk about something small but still useful. Cinnamon is not magic. It will not reverse insulin resistance by itself, but randomized trials and meta-analyses suggest it can modestly reduce fasting glucose in people with type 2 diabetes. Mechanistically, cinnamon may improve aspects of insulin signaling and glucose handling, though the effect size varies depending on dose, baseline health, and the type of cinnamon used. So what does that mean in real life? Use it as a supporting actor, not the star. Add it to oats, smoothies, fruit bowls, tea, or coffee. It supports the environment. It doesn't replace the fundamentals. Number 9, use diaphragmatic breathing to turn down the glucose stress loop. If you want a way to lower blood sugar without touching food, you have to understand the brain-liver connection, because your nervous system talks directly to your liver. When you're stressed, cortisol and adrenaline tell the liver release glucose. That's one reason why blood sugar can rise even when you haven't eaten. Slow diaphragmatic breathing changes that. Controlled breathing studies show that it influences stress responses, including cortisol-related outcomes. Mechanistically, slow breathing shifts the autonomic nervous system away from fight or flight and toward parasympathetic tone. That reduces the hormonal signals telling your liver to keep dumping sugar into the bloodstream. This is why I often say movement opens the drain, breathing turns down the faucet. A simple protocol: 3 to 5 minutes, slow nasal breathing, longer exhale than inhale, especially after meals or before bed. This is not just relaxation. This is liver regulation. Number 10, use yoga as a metabolic tool. Yoga is not just stretching. It's nervous system regulation plus light muscular muscular activation, plus often better sleep, all of which improve blood sugar. Meta-analyses show yoga interventions can improve glycemic control markers in adults with type 2 diabetes. That makes sense physiologically. Yoga helps reduce stress hormones while also creating muscular glucose uptake and improving parasympathetic tone. So if you want something gentle that still has a real metabolic effect, yoga can be incredibly useful, especially in the evening. 15 to 30 minutes can be enough to change how your entire night behaves metabolically. Number 11, sauna as recovery and metabolic support. Sauna is not just about detoxing your body. It is controlled heat stress, and repeated heat exposure appears to improve vascular function and may support cardiometabolic resilience. Large cohort data have linked frequent sauna use with lower cardiovascular and all-cause mortality. Now, sauna is not a primary insulin resistance strategy, but it can support better circulation, better recovery, better sleep, and lower sympathetic tone in some people. And all of those downstream effects matter for insulin sensitivity. So think of sauna as a recovery multiplier, not a shortcut. Number 12, cold exposure can help, but it's optional. Cold exposure can activate brown adipose tissue and increase glucose uptake. In controlled research, cold acclimation improved peripheral insulin sensitivity in people with type 2 diabetes. That's fascinating, but here's the right framing. Cold exposure is optional. It's not foundational. Yes, it can increase glucose disposal and energy expenditure, but if sleep is poor, stress is high, meals are high in saturated fat, and movement is inconsistent, cold exposure will not save you. Use it if you like it, start gently, stay consistent, but never let it distract you from the basics. The truth that makes everything else work better. Here's what most people miss. These strategies work best in a low saturated fat metabolic environment because saturated fat is one of the strongest drivers of the intracellular congestion that causes insulin resistance in the first place. So if you combine low fat, whole food, plant-based eating with sleep protection, post-meal walking, stress reduction, and circadian alignment, you are not managing diabetes. You are changing the physiology that created it. That's when people stop saying, I can't handle carbs, and start saying, my numbers finally make sense again. If you want our step-by-step roadmap that puts this into a simple weekly structure, comment guide below and we'll send you our free guide. Because you are not broken, your metabolism is adaptive. And when you remove the interference, the system starts working the way it was designed to work. Until next time, keep those carbs high and that A1C low.